Hi, this is Lisa Cutan, editor at Asian Agribiz. With farmers tempted to lower production costs and feed makers facing issues with labels according to regulations, home mixing seems to be a possible solution. Today, my colleague Hatu talks to Matthew Clark, Director of Feed Guys Resources, on the challenges and the feasibility of this solution.
Hello, Matthew. Thank you for joining us in this podcast.
Thanks, Artu. It's great to be discussing the topic with you today.
The topic today is home mixed feed. It comes to my mind because I think farmers are always exploring the reduction in feed cost, and they want to do what feed millers currently do. But I wonder, would this be a risky turn? This topic may be controversial, but the burden of feed costs has driven farms to explore home production of their own feed. What do you think?
Well, certainly farmers are tempted by lower costs of home production. The staff and the capital costs are significantly less compared to industrial production, and there are savings to be made.
But at the same time, I think that the problems are also faced with the feed makers because they're struggling with the labels according to the regulations. For example, they have to adjust the minimum protein content, and it does not reflect the real nutrition values of the feed. So I've learned that some feed millers have topped up their crude protein level with the protein sources that are less digestible, like the feather meal or the blood meal.
Oh yes, that's true, and that's a major difference between industrial production and home production. Now, the requirement for crude protein is interesting because let's remember, crude protein is not a nutrient; it is simply a chemical measure. In broilers, our main objective is to supply digestible amino acids. So farmers sometimes go for home mixing specifically to be able to select out the high quality amino acid supplies and to avoid ingredients they suspect compromise the integrity of the amino acid supply. So that they are not constrained to deliver a minimum crude protein. And this can save about $10 to $20 per ton of feed cost in the current markets. Now, the constraint on crude protein, it adds unnecessary cost, of course, but it also oversupplies nitrogen to the broiler houses, and this has some negative clinical effects. We get more respiratory problems, for example, due to the excess ammonia, and the litter moisture goes up, and we can get coccidiosis as a result. So generally speaking, we want to minimize crude protein, not reach a target level.
Okay, so that's a one bonus point for farmers to produce their own feed. But if they do so, they can also choose which ingredients they want, regardless of the protein level, and then they can concentrate more on the amino acid content. Am I understanding it right?
Oh yes, that's absolutely right. And the farmers can specifically look at amino acid content. Now, most feed millers, though, we have to say, are trying to move away from purchasing based on crude protein to have better formulations. But there's still this thing about crude protein that holds them up. So farmers like to go for amino acid digestibility, and so do the feed mills. It's just easier on the farm level to do it.
And we should emphasize the flexibility to choose the ingredients, especially when the market is not good, right?
Yes, we should. That's an interesting question, because when the markets are challenging, it's the feed mills who are going to be running around looking for alternative ingredients, and the farmers say, well, our feed is working, so let's pay the money and keep the performance. So generally, farmers like to stabilize their formulas, even though the cost might be slightly higher. Feed mills, they focus on livestock performance as well. But the farm feed mills are probably more concerned because it's directly their own money.
May I ask, what type of feed are you using?
On the broiler farm, I use pelleted feeds, so necessarily they come from a large feed mill. But for the layer farmers I work with, I recommend to use home-produced mash feeds most of the time. Most homemade layer feeds are in mash form.
Okay, why you choose to use pellet feed?
Oh, okay. So the advantage of the industrial feed production is the pelleting, which improves the growth rate. It improves the feed intake and then the growth rate, and also we get an improvement in the FCR. And that improvement can be about 5% better than mash feed on average. So pelleting is a valuable process in broilers, but it doesn't have the same effect on layer feeds. This is why layer farmers have more flexibility compared to broiler farmers.
So, what do you suggest farmers to do, especially broiler farmers? Should they continue with mash feed or move to pellet feed?
I would encourage broiler farmers to continue to evaluate mash feeds, though, because although the FCR may be slightly higher, mash feeds have a tendency to reduce mortality, which is also important to farmers. Now, the main benefits of the mash feed are direct control of raw materials and the lower cost of production. These are the main drivers behind this home mix production feed. But we must make sure it is subject to any changes that happen in the FCR. One thing that works for us, though, is that the modern broiler eats really well. So it's not the limit it used to be, say, even 20 years ago, where the broiler was more particular on feed intake. So I believe that the home mixing of broiler feed should be under constant control in the constant review in the broiler sector. Now, on the economic side, the cost portion of raw materials for home mixed feed is different to industrial feed. Ingredients in the home mixed feed are 90% of the feed cost. And industrial feed has higher overheads, so raw materials end up being 80% of feed cost, the difference being a higher overhead. So there are economies that we can capture, but always we have to say it's subject to performance changes, but those can be investigated.
So it seems that we have 2 votes for home mixed feed. But I wonder how farmers measure the ingredients and the nutritional values of the ingredients, because they also have to address the issue of calibration using NIR or any other testing equipment. And I ask this question because I presume that farmers have limited knowledge on this matter.
Oh yes, that's true. The farmer is exposed to variation in ingredient quality. So in the past, the premix companies have given quite good lab support with wet chemistry to the farmers, and this helps to put a QC process in place that keeps the suppliers honest, actually. But premix companies in general are making big advances in sharing NIR technology, especially with the handheld devices that are coming into the market much more. So I would say it's important to have a good technical partner for this farm system and the QC program to work well.
Okay. So say if they have had a good partner, technical partner, there are also some issues related to the ingredient storage, such as the risk of mycotoxin or the heat effect on amino acids and supplements. Because normally when I visited feed mills, I saw that they have a temperature controlled rooms for those ingredients. So do you think a farm need to have a good storage conditions for the materials and the finished feed?
Oh yes, so the quality of the storage is very important. A cold room with air conditioning is definitely going to help. We don't need to have a refrigerated room. If we can get the temperature down to 18 degrees Celsius, we're doing fine. So it doesn't have to be complex. But I think it's important that farmers organize their supply chain to purchase small lots, if possible, from a reliable, constant supplier to help minimize the on-farm stock. And this helps with the ingredient quality going into the mixed feeds.
Mm. When you say they should organize their supply chain, does it mean that they should have an extra team, some staff to take care of that? And if they do so, will that increase the cost and require management skills?
I don't think so. We look at the way the suppliers work, and their salespeople are very attentive. They visit regularly, they check the stock, they advise the farmer when they need to buy something. So I don't think they will need to increase their staff significantly on the farm. What I do advise, though, is that they train their production staff in good management practices and also in the data recording, so that the stock, especially the micro-ingredients, are carefully recorded. Now, many farmers will coordinate the purchasing with the help of an administrative assistant. That's common. At a later stage, maybe you need a purchasing department, but not at the beginning.
Okay, so let's say that all of those challenges can be addressed what farmers should prepare themselves with if they want to have a feed production line in their farm?
Ah, well, it's very simplest. The system needs a warehouse and then a grinder for the corn. You need a weighing system and a mixer, and sometimes those are the same unit. I think on a farm, though, we can also look at extrusion as a method for producing in-house proteins and to control the quality. Now, this is a big discussion, and we could go on at length designing the best farm system, but it doesn't have to be complicated at the beginning, and the layer farm systems are generally fairly simple, easy to use.
Having said that, I think the main purpose of producing of farmers to produce their own feed is the cost, like we mentioned at the beginning of this podcast. But I'm wondering if it's possible, given all of the things that we have mentioned, like the storage conditions, the mixing systems, and all of the other preparation for a producing line.
With layer feeds, it's certainly easy to make a good layer feed at home. And in Malaysia, where I work, most of the layer feeds are produced on farms. Now, the layer farmers that are using factory feeds are layer farms that have got very big and they've built a factory. So these systems grow. And the broiler feeds, it's the grinding and the pelleting operational capability, and of course a dryer that make a difference. And we don't usually have space to put those into a farm feed mill. All of the feeds have to all the time be evaluated on in terms of final cost of production. But the production system for the mash feeds is not complicated or expensive. Now, another point is that home mixing becomes more feasible when there's locally available ingredients and with easy availability. Now, in some countries, what I find is that the layer producers, in the off-season for corn, they're going to the feed mills to buy their feed. And when corn is in season and coming freely off the farms, they are making their own feeds. So it doesn't have to be a decision either or forever. It's sometimes a matter of convenience. In Indonesia, when the corn price is high because of seasonal effect, the layer farmers go to the feed mill. And when it's easily available locally, they buy that form. They buy onto the farm directly, and they save the feed cost. So there is this half and half situation. So home mixing is a very viable alternative to purchasing feeds, and it doesn't have to be a big capital expenditure.
It's interesting that you mentioned that that farmers can choose the local materials when they're in good prices. But do you really think it's feasible given all of the farms that have used it? Did you see that they have successfully reduced the cost with that?
Oh yes, they have successfully reduced the cost. And I think corn is one of the big inputs we need to look at. Corn quality will vary during a season. The moisture is up and down, for example, and this affects the nutrient level. So keep a good eye on the quality of the ingredients, and the handheld NIR is very good for this, as well as simple things like testing moisture. Farmers do tend to be a bit conservative with their formulations. They like to generally go with one supplier for one commodity. And so they will stick more closely to mainstream ingredients, actually. So the flexibility is sometimes around the supplier of the corn or the supplier of the soybean meal, rather than bringing in extra ingredients. And this conservatism does have a stabilizing effect on the farm performance.
Great. I think now I see it's a feasible solution given all of your explanations. But in conclusion, I need to make this clear that we don't mean to say farmers should or should not make home mixed feed. What we hope is to present some existing issues of the feed sector, and whoever can provide the solutions for these matters will bring the benefits to the feed and the livestock industry as a whole. What do you think?
Well, I got involved many years ago in Malaysia in enabling companies to start their feed mills, and the first thing they want to know about is to find out the nutrition expertise. What should my formula look like? And from that, they do their feasibility studies. So one of the basics we have in this farm mix sector is to work with a good nutrition company who's going to assist in that formulation and also provide some QC backup. The solution providers out in the market today, they're putting a lot more effort into this market segment because we find that the small farm feed mill eventually becomes a big farm with a big feed mill. So they are growing their client base by doing this. And they will have a big role to play in determining the feasibility of the on-farm feeds, which are a viable alternative to industrial pelleted feeds. So I think it's a sector with promise. I believe the farmers would shop around for a good deal on their supplier and look very closely at the technical support that is going to give them the confidence to make the move into home production.
Okay, wonderful. And I hope our audience will realize the values in your recommendations, and they will be more confident in producing their own feed. So thank you very much for your inputs, Matthew.
Well, thank you, Artur. It's great topics to discuss and appreciate being involved. Thank you.
I hope to see you again soon.
Indeed, look forward to that. Thank you.
We hope that you picked up some valuable information from this episode and look forward to seeing how you can apply it in your farms. Thank you for listening in. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel on Spotify, Apple Music, or wherever you get your podcasts. For more on the Asian animal protein industries, please visit www.asian-agribiz.com.